her dreams with fearless hands. A queen of vision, she takes her stand. Breaking limits, forging new ways, turning passion into brighter days. From boredoms high to streets below, her empire shines, her powers grow. With strength and wisdom, bold and free, she leads the way, this is her empire.
Hi, you're back with another episode of Her Empire, the platform where we showcase the journey, heart, and determination of the women we know and support who give it their all, no permissions required. Today, Oz Arab Media is privileged to host Reem Borrows, an author, human rights advocate, and founder of Dream Coaching and Consulting. Reem, thank you so much for joining us here at the studio today.
Thank you so much for having me, and such a privilege to be here as well.
The pleasure is ours. Let's jump into the first question. Can you explain the value of working in coaching and business development, especially now, the excitement, what that journey brings for a lot of people?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for asking that question as well. I start with every conversation with the Bernard Shaw sort of quote. 2% of people think, 3% of people think they think, and 95% of people would rather die than think. And most people do that. They just laugh, okay? They just laugh and they go, no, there's no way, Reem, that can be true. But if we have a look at the way we live our lives, if we have a look at, remember the toilet crisis during the lockdowns?
Yes.
That's the first thing we thought about. We thought we'd go straight to the supermarket, have arguments about how much toilet paper we're going to bring home with us during lockdowns. Or road rage.
Road rage, yeah.
Arguments that we have, siblings not talking to each other, the challenges that we've got in organisations with lack of communication or communication problems, perception, all of that. So really, if we think about it, because we're on autopilot constantly, most of us would rather die than think until we consciously start to think.
Talk to me about that.
So what does that actually mean?
Yes.
Right? What that means is this, right? We've got 60 to 90,000 thoughts per day. 95% of them are repeated day in, day out, day in, day out. And if we're not careful, 80% of them are negative. And if we don't have clearly defined goals and we don't know what we want, we become very habitual in creating habits that no longer serve us. And then we imprison ourselves. We go, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to do it, but we don't think why we're doing it or what is it that we want. So most of us are on autopilot. We've also all got blind spots. So it doesn't matter how successful you are. We all need coaching so that we understand where our blind spots are. So we can ask ourselves all the right questions, because the quality of your life is not determined by the quality of the solutions you come up with. It's determined by the quality of the questions that you ask yourself. Like, what am I not seeing? How can I make how can I make this easy on myself? What do I want? How about this one? Like, most people have got PhDs in what they don't want. If I was to ask people, what do you want?
Very insightful.
Most people tell you what they don't want. But then I go, but that's not the question that I asked you. I asked you, what would you want? And that's when the creation starts. The vast majority of us, because we're under stress, and it's just because of our prehistoric brain, the way it's designed. Our brains are so prehistoric in terms of our reptilian brain and our mammalian brain, that by the time we come to start thinking, we're only thinking about survival. What does survival do? It puts you into habit. Our beautiful creative brain is that one brain, part of the brain that is the youngest side of the brain. And under stress, it's the first thing that shuts down. And most of us think that we're thinking, but we're actually in survival mode. So what does that mean? We stop seeing the ability to think clearly around, well, can I see this different way? We start going on autopilot and we go into our prehistoric brain. We go looking for memories that we can bring into our current present. And all we're doing is creating the past from the present, in the present, because we're relying on our past memories. And by the way, did you know this? Are you ready for this little...
Hit me with it.
Are you ready for this little piece?
I've already learnt so much.
According to Joe Dispenza, he's a neuroscientist, 50% of our memories are made up by the time we're 35. So the way the mechanics of the mind works is that something happens now. We want to get a solution, a new solution. But what we do is we go into this corrupt data set and try to look for memories of the past to try and bring a solution into the future. And we're just recreating the same problems over and over and over again. That's why coaching is needed. That's why the top CEOs in the world all have coaches. That's why every coach has a coach.
And let's focus on that today. That's why you're here, obviously talking about your work, but your journey. The journey will come.
Yes.
But talk to us about the value of your work. Walk us through what a typical day would look like.
Okay, so for me personally, or are you talking about for
your business, for your
business?
clients?
The most important part of coaching is helping people to understand what they're not seeing and all the opportunities that lay ahead of them. So it doesn't matter how successful you are. And the first thing we do is define what is success, because every single person has a different thought about success. But to me, the principles behind coaching is success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal of a goal or a goal. The progressive realization, that means I'm taking action every single day once I have a clearly defined goal towards that goal. Success is not, did I just do the right thing and did it succeed and did I fail and am I making money and did I win the customer or did I get the promotion? Success is the progressive realization. So that means you have to take action every single day. A lot of times, because of our blind spots, okay, we don't know what we're missing out on. So what coaching does is asks all the right questions, not the menial, unproductive questions.
Which is a stigma associated with coaching.
Yes. Well, it depends on, again, if you want to go deep into it, coaching is all about the meaningful questions. So, for example, can I give you a non-productive question versus a productive
Yes,
question? Okay, let's talk about women, okay?
Yes.
We can wake up in the morning and we can go through, look at our at our image in the mirror and we say, oh, my bum looks too big in this, or I wish I had better hair, or why can't I get this right? That's a useless question. That's a question that comes from fear, from, it's a question that's not going to be of value. Now, if it was up to me, I would change that question. I would be going, what am I not seeing? What do I want? Who can help me get a better result? How do I make this easy? Those are beautiful questions to be asking. What am I seeing that this person's not seeing? Or what is this person seeing that I'm not seeing? How do I go into creation mode? Rather than, this will never work out for me. Why doesn't it work out for me? See those questions, the difference between the questions? Some are productive, some are non-productive. And our prehistoric brain tends to take us to the non-productive questions because we're in survival mode. So what coaching does is takes us out of survival mode, opens up the pure creative brain, which is the youngest brain, and starts to ask all the beautiful questions so that we can start being laser-like focused on what it is that we want.
Clearly a passion for you, Reem, and I could see by your passion a lot more people are better off for it. Taking a step into the publishing world is quite a recent achievement for you as well. Shifting the focus now. Executive coaching, you've got that nurture and that motivation that you instill with people. Let's now talk about your book.
Yes.
What's that driving motivation and that key message that you wanted to share?
It's a very interesting part of the journey for me. So at Dream Coaching Consulting, we specialise in heart-centred leadership, in strengthening resilience, and in growth. It can be sales execution or some kind of growth, because we truly believe that if you're not growing as a human being, you're disintegrating. That's for anything that's a living organism. You're either growing or you're disintegrating. I was writing a leadership book. So I got up to chapter 4 in the leadership book.
Okay.
And in this leadership book, it's all about heart-centered leadership and whole leaders that we need, because partial leaders, we can't continue long-term with partial leadership. It's literally killing our organisations. Because of my background, so I'm, as you know, Palestinian, I was born in the Holy Land. I was born in Haifa. I was 14 when I immigrated to Australia. I've had the opportunity to live in England. I've had the opportunity to live in the Middle East. I've had the opportunity to live even in Australia, from Sydney to Darwin to Melbourne, Brisbane, and then back to Sydney. So I've had a lot of diversity in my life. And as I was writing the book and came to chapter 4, I knew there was another story to be written. At the time, I had my own coach. His name is Neil Donald Walsh, who is the author of Conversations with God. So he published his book in 27 languages, has sold millions of copies.
Amazing.
And I sort of started talking to him, and he said, you need to write this book. And I knew I had to write the book. So I put my leadership book to the side and wrote this one. Because at the time, and this was 2.5 to 3 years ago, we could see things progressing and that things were going to get a lot worse than what they were in Palestine. And as I was watching it, I went, I've got to put my voice into it. Now, the book was written in twofold, first from the head and then from the heart. The first half is all about, in terms of the journey of what got us to where we are today, and then it was the heart. Because what's happened, and I know you know all of this, but the reality is this, right? As human beings, for whatever reason, the mind is a beautiful, creative thing, but we've made it into the captain and we've relegated the heart into second position.
Very well articulated, Reem.
Okay. And it's the heart that has to be the first position, while the mind needs to be that humble servant, the intelligent servant. Because the mind is a battlefield. You know that, don't you? We've got that many thoughts per day. 85% of them are negative. If we rely on the head first before the heart, all sorts of problems occur. Hence, have a look at where we are today, geopolitically, economically.
Not in a great place at all.
No. But the only reason for that is because the mind always looks how we're going to sort of find a division between ourselves. The first thing we do is we look for differences, and then we put ourselves into tribes, and we want to be in tribes. Because that comes from prehistoric nature of the mammalian brain that says you have to be in a tribe so that you're always safe and that a lion doesn't come and eat you if you're on your own. The heart looks for similarities. Love. The mind plays on fear, the heart plays on love. So when you relegate the heart to secondary position, all sorts of problems happen. Now, some people go, oh, but love is weak. Well, no, love is actually the strongest. Because it's very easy to hate. It's very easy. It comes naturally to us. That's what the prehistoric brain is there to do. It's very easy to argue. It's very easy to cry, to get angry, to look for faults, to blame. That comes naturally to us. We don't need a PhD in that. It takes inner strength to go deep into the heart and understand the ego, why it's there to sort of support us for survival reasons. To ask ourselves, would I rather be right or kind? To look for similarities takes strength.
It does. Reem, thank you for sharing your experience, your approach, and obviously the science behind heart-centered leadership as well. Moving into your journey, now your personal journey, talk to us about your career and those crunch moments, the highs, the lows, the twists and the turns. Starting with that moment you realized you wanted to achieve something big.
Yeah, it's a really good question. That means I've got to take it back nearly 3 decades.
Definitely
Are you ready
do that.
for
Yes, I am. All day.
Right, so after university, I mean, I've always been someone who has wanted to do well and achieve. It's a dream. That's hence why even my organisation is called Dream Coaching and Consulting. What happened was we immigrated to Australia at the age of 14. I went to about 3 to 4 different high schools in year 8,
Wow.
just to give you some context. So I never really quite felt like I belonged until I belonged, if that makes sense. I had to learn quite a bit. When we came to Australia, it was the first time where I felt a sense of freedom. And my father, my mum, and my siblings. So I went, wow, are you saying to me I can do whatever I want, become whatever I want, and it's all based on just my hard work without any limitations? Because I do come from a country where we were treated as second-class citizens at best. And there was a differentiation. So here I am, we got our Australian citizenships. I'm a Palestinian, proud Australian, to a new country. And I went, okay, this is going to be good. If I work, I'll get somewhere. That was kind of like the equation. And I did. I worked really hard during university. I finished my postgraduate. I was working waitressing, Lebanese restaurants, you name it. I was doing it. And even when I got my first full-time job, I still worked as a part, like in my second job at night.
The hustle was real.
The hustle was real and it was beautiful. I loved it. But then the crutch came. At 25, 26, I started realizing I wasn't achieving what I wanted to achieve. So what then happened was I went into this mode of, I don't understand this. I mean, I'm meant to be doing well, but I'm not doing well. I'm not achieving what I want to achieve. I'm doing so much and achieving so little. And that's when I found the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yes.
That's right. And I read it. And I went, hang on a second, I can do this. At the same time, this is the interesting part, at the same time, my sister was an Olympic athlete. She's 10 years younger than me.
Amazing.
And she was going to represent Australia at the 2000 Olympics. Her first Olympic was in 1996, but she wanted to train in Sydney. She's 10 years younger than me. She was 16 or 17 at the time. My parents are going, how can we let her move to Sydney on her own? And I went, don't worry, I'll move with her. But I learned a lot from my sister because I went, have a look at how an athlete, a top-tier athlete, behaves. At the same time, there was a Harvard University research study that came out, and it was how to become the corporate athlete. So you just imagine this. I've got my sister on one hand, and I'm driving her back and forth to training. She had between 6 to 8 hours a day of training.
Wow.
Then I've got my desires to be in the corporate world. And then this Harvard review comes out, research. And I read it and I went, I can do that. And here's the crux of it. You had to be laser-like focused on your goal. You had to visualize your goal. And then you had to take small steps and do them in big ways. What I was doing was taking big steps in tiny ways. I tried to do everything. I call it now the shiny star syndrome.
Yeah.
And I wasn't getting anything done. So that's when I went, okay, I need some clearly defined goals, such as I want to be working for one of the largest pharmaceutical organisations in the world. First, I had to get an interview for them to accept me. That's number one step. Second of all, I realised that I didn't have any investments. So by the time I was 26, 27, I said, by the time I'm 30, I want to get 2 properties, investment properties. So you can see where I was going with this, right? So I put these goals in place. I didn't care where the properties were. So it wasn't about, you remember how we used to play Monopoly?
Yes, yes.
The first 2 blocks out of Go are the cheapest. The cheapest real estate, but they're really cheap, right?
Good returns though.
And because we used to play Monopoly a lot, I went, I know, I don't have much money right now, but I'm going to find the cheapest possible properties. Because I didn't say how much they were going to be. I said I was going to enter the market. So I went and found some property, and I also bought them online, by the way, like it was on the phone. I didn't even look at them. Bought properties in Brisbane. And you know what happened in Brisbane.
Ahead of the curve there, Reem.
All right.
You're being too humble.
But they were cheap, Monopoly, the 2 brown blocks outside of Go. But that was a good move because then that opened up the opportunity for me to be able to buy eventually the Oxford Street Monopoly properties here in Sydney.
Mabruk.
It's a beautiful story, isn't it?
It's a beautiful, beautiful story. Look, we've heard about the positives, and a lot of times, women don't want to share the negatives. Do you have any career regrets?
Oh, so that's a really for a mindset coach.
Yes.
Can I reframe it a little bit?
Yes, you can.
At the time, they may have felt like regrets. And I've had a lot of failures, a lot of mistakes, but I do believe that you learn from them all. So again, the mind takes you to a place where you're going to judge yourself. You're going to be hard on yourself. You're going to have regrets. And it's okay to fall. Falling is fine. Cry. Go for it. Cry. Get angry. Do all of that. But at some stage, you're going to say, when do I get out of this pity party?
I'm sure there's a lot of crying involved.
Yeah, because I'm going to tell you a story in a second. This is a good one. But I had to get myself out of the pity parties and go, okay, now how do I come from the heart? My mum taught me one thing, and this is in the book, okay? She said to me, Reem, whatever you do in life, always come from a position of strength, never from a position of weakness. In other words, it doesn't matter what happens to your life, don't be the victim. And I learned that from a young kid called Muhammad, who unfortunately he was part of an explosion, and he lost his eyesight, he lost the skin around his skull, he lost his arms, his legs. So there's quite a few things that happened to him, and yet he was the smartest kid in the school. He played the durbaki. which is the drum.
Amazing.
Like there was no tomorrow. And
That
he ended up being a
resilience.
psychologist as well as a poet and published his own book. So that's where I went, how can he do that, Mum? And she said, Reem, always come from a position of strength, never from a position of weakness. That means something's going to happen to you in life. Go for it. Cry. Be sad. At some point in time, you're going to have to lift yourself back up. That's where strengthening resilience comes from. And say, what do I want? And keep moving. So I'll tell you one of my first earlier career.
Yes, please do.
It was sad, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. So I was going for my first promotion. I really wanted this promotion. It was in sales management. I'd been in my role for 4 years. I'd climbed the sales leadership ladder, had been awarded leadership awards, everything you can name, and here was the promotion. It was the perfect promotion. And I was working day and night to, prove myself. There was 8 of us that applied for this role. 2 of us ended up at the very, very end. So we had 6 interviews. And in
A
the
very comprehensive process.
very comprehensive process, psych testings,
Oh,
the
goodness.
the whole like cavoodle.
The works.
In the end, I didn't get the role. But here's the kicker. The person who did get the role was my partner at the time.
No way.
So we knew we were competing with each other. He was my boyfriend at the time. And he got the job. And I was so sure, not so sure that I would get it, but I really wanted it. If we were to talk now, we've spoken a lot, obviously, he's told me he didn't want it as much as me. So you can imagine how I felt. I had to be happy for him at the one time, and I was crying on the other hand. He had to be happy for him on the one hand, and he felt so bad for me at the time. But I just took 2 days out. I cried. I did what I had to do. Then
As
I
you
put
do.
as you do,
As you do.
and then I put my big girl pants on, and I went, right, what do we do next? But here's the kicker, and this is my biggest learning. The way I conducted myself at the time meant that 6 months from that time, another opportunity came to me, which catapulted my career.
Amazing.
Absolutely catapulted it. And it wasn't a job that was available. It was a brand new role. So my partner at the time, who now, by the way, is my husband of 23 years, and we've got 2 beautiful kids.
Beautiful, beautiful. A nice twist and turn.
It is nice twist and turn. But at the time, he got the perfect promotion, but I got the perfect promotion for me, and it really catapulted my career from there.
That's an
So
absolutely
that's why I
gorgeous
say
insight.
I can't regret anything.
Yeah.
Even at the end of my career with the corporate world, it was really sad to leave the corporate world. But it helped me. Had I not left, I wouldn't have started my own business. And I wouldn't have experienced what I've experienced over the last 8 years from all over the world. So how can you regret anything?
Food for thought, definitely. Reem, this show takes a no permission required mindset. What's your view on this approach? And what advice do you have to share to other women or men?
Yeah, it's a good question. And women or men, but let's talk about women. Actually, you know what? Anyone can take this advice. Women do, though, historically, we have this need to ask for permission. Whether it's because nurture or nature, we've yet to decide. But it's a bit of both, I think. So the do not take permission doesn't mean you're doing things in the wrong way. All it means is that doubt, fear, worry, and worrying about what other people think of you should be the last thing on your mind. The only reason why people don't like failure is not because they're scared of failure. They're scared of what other people will think of them and how will they be viewed. So most of us seek permission so we can get validation. But how about we go, again, back to the heart space, because your soul knows everything. We need to, at some point in time, become the source rather than constantly seeking, the seeker. If you go deep into your heart and trust yourself, why do you need permission to do anything? If you go into your heart, so it's all coming from an open space, it's coming from faith, you do it with intention. So you're not asking for permission, but you know you're doing it with the right intention that's going to be of benefit for every single person around you. So it's not just about what's good for you. Not seeking permission doesn't mean you're going to do any harm to anyone else. It's the opposite if you do it from a heart-centered space. And we've got to be really mindful. You know where procrastination comes from?
No.
The fear of what other people will think and thinking that it's just too much for me. It comes from just doubting ourselves a bit too much. That's why I love this whole space of don't seek permission. Make a decision. You want to make a committed decision. Once you know what it is that you want to make a committed decision and just go for it.
Okay, Reem, now turning to our male audience, what's one piece of advice that you could share with them on how to better work alongside of women in the business world?
Okay, it's a very important question right now, because I think we underestimate the power of diversity. And so a little bit more stats before I go on with
Yes,
this, so
please.
people understand this. If we have 400 billion bits of information coming at us in 1 second, and each one of us is only aware of 2,000 bits of information, what we are currently seeing is very narrow. So when people talk about diversity and then you see eyes rolling, going, oh, here we go, we're just going to have to tick the boxes. And
Yes.
well, it's not for that purpose. It's because each of us is only seeing a very, very narrow piece of information. Now, all of us want to be creative. All of us want to be innovative. All of us want to do really well. But how can you do really, really well if you're only focusing on this tiny bit of information? Every single person you have walking, like sitting with you in the room, is going to see a different 2,000 pieces. You bring those 2,000 pieces together. You ask the right questions, because when you ask questions, you start seeing a little bit more than 2,000. You get new ideas, new innovation, new solutions. You grow together. Why wouldn't you want to have more women sitting on your table, having a seat at the table with opinions, different opinions? For me personally, from a diversity perspective, I want a whole host of different people sitting with me, because I don't want to see the same thing. Why do I want everyone who sees exactly the same thing as me? Because that means Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It's okay to disagree with people. No two people are ever going to agree on everything anyway. If we just go, again, back to heart-centered leadership, this is for men. Okay. Let's put our ego to the side, men and women. And I'm not talking about bravado ego. I'm talking about the ego that just only wants us to be very safe and not explore anything that's outside of what we know. Let's allow new ideas come in to flow through. Let's allow new ways of doing business. Because the masculine energy is critical for business, the planning, the positive masculine energy, planning, being on time, action points, that's very important. But then there's the feminine energy, which is the nurturing. Think about the people skills. A business is only of value when you treat all the people right. No people in the building, that's it, the business is gone, correct? So
Absolutely.
human resources, we underestimate the value of human resources. So why not bring the nurturers, the carers, the people who will see things differently, the different communicators on board, and then how much better will we be? Can I give you one final piece of advice?
Yes, you absolutely can.
Along your road to success, expect to be disappointed.
Expect disappointment.
Expect disappointment, just so much easier. So that means, what does it happen? So if something doesn't work out, you go, that's okay. In this case, it didn't work out. I'm going to expect to be disappointed by people. I'm going to be expected to be disappointed by things that don't work out, because I know I'm going to learn from it, and then that's going to get me to take the next step, and that's going to propel me to my next vision. Hi, I'm Reem Borrows from Dream Coaching and Consulting. Don't forget to watch Her Empire, where I'm going to share my legacy with you so you can start yours.